All right, everyone. What is up? It's me, the most magnificent bird, Beak, and here I am. Finally, I'm going to be talking about Scream 7 again, except this time we're going to be getting into all of the spoilers. We're going to be talking about the cold open Foley. We're going to be talking about some of the kills. We're going to talk about the killer reveals. We're going to be talking about all of that good stuff. So, if you have not seen the movie and you want to see the movie, this is your final chance to go ahead and get out of here before I start spoiling things. And I have a plethora of topics and things that happen in the movie that I want to talk about and discuss. And maybe they won't be in order. Maybe I won't remember every single thing, but I think I got down here, marked down here, what I have remembered the most. So, if you want to leave a comment, all that good stuff, you're more than welcome to. But I'm going to go ahead and get into the spoilers in three, two, one. All right, here we go. So let's go over the cold open, which involves the characters Scott and Madison. I want to say her name is Madison in the movie. Her real name is Michelle Rudolph. I do know that from one of my subscribers. But anyway, okay, so both Scott and Madison, they go to the Stewmacher's old house, which is now Airbnb for stab fanatics, and they go in there and there's stab rememberabilia all over the place, like you see in the trailer, all that good stuff. Madison, she obviously doesn't want to be there, and the boyfriend Scott, he's way too excited, and the person or the people that they rented the Airbnb out from, they call them and they fuck with them a little bit, not wanting to kill them in a type of way, but like since the boyfriend is a horror movie fan, like he's like, on the phone call, the person talking to him is like, oh, I'm gonna ask you some questions, and if you don't get them right, we're gonna come and kill you, all that stuff like Ghostface says. And well, they get them all right and nothing happens. So, Madison is exploring the house, and that's when she runs into Ghostface, but not the actual Ghostface. It's just a mechanical sensor motion of Ghostface, because whenever somebody's in that room and they're moving around, Ghostface will move around, and you will hear this whir, whir, like noise, right? To indicate that it's not a real person. So, Scott, he's coming back from the car to get all of their stuff, and she says that I'm trying to be supportive of you, of liking this shit, but she's not a fan of the horror stuff. And he says, yeah, all right, you know what, if you want to go home, we can go home. And she's like, you know what, it's too late, we might as well stay here. And that's when he says, I'm gonna go to the bathroom or whatever. So he disappears for a minute, and then she gets a call from Ghostface. Madison does, and he says, I'm gonna, you're gonna die tonight, you little bitch, or whatever. And it's Scott just fucking with her, because he even puts on the whole ghost face costume and everything. And there's like one shot of where she's in the room, where she's in one of the rooms, and you could see the ghost face mask like in the dark, but you don't see the actual hood, you just see the mask part, which I thought that was really well shot. And he sneaks up behind her, Scott does, and he gets punched in the face, deservedly so. And he's like, you know what, that was a dick move of me or whatever. And after he takes the costume off, now you notice that the animatronic ghost face is moving while all this is happening, but you don't hear that you don't hear that noise that was going on before. And Scott picks up on it like, something's not right here, because he's like moving, the ghost face is moving, but you don't hear that mechanical noise like you did beforehand. Scott gets up close to Ghostface and he attacks, and it's the real Ghostface killer this time. The real Ghostface killer switched places with the animatronic. I don't know what he did with the animatronic, but whatever. Here we are. Ghostface attacks and kills Scott, stabs him in the chest and in the back, and then stabs him through the side of the head. And the way that, I guess, where the knife meets with the eye sockets or whatever, like the way his eyes kind of just roll back, like damn, like then that's when Ghostface chases Madison up the stairs, like you've seen in the trailer if you watch the trailer, and they end up, both Madison and Ghostface end up at the top of the stairs, and that's when Ghostface falls over the railing onto the floor downstairs, and Madison, she's holding on for dear life on the chandelier, but then as you know from the trailer, well, she ends up slipping and falling, and that's when Ghostface rises up his knife and she lands perfectly on it, and that's when he gets up, Ghostface gets up, and that's when he starts pouring gasoline everywhere and sets the Stumacher house ablaze. And Madison is still alive, seeing all of this take place. And ooh, when certain parts of the house are on fire, this is when Ghostface is a real mean bastard. Instead of just putting Madison out of her misery at that point, he just decides like a motherfucker to pour gasoline on Madison and then sets her ablaze and then just casually walks out because he can, and the chandelier ends up falling on a burning crispy Madison. Like what the fuck? And then that's, you got the shot of him walking out of the burning house, and then we get to the title card of the movie. And yeah, I just honestly thought that this was, in my opinion, the third best cold open. I think it's even better than the Scream 6 cold open personally. I don't think it would ever top the first or second one, but for me it's the third best cold open. It is this cold open is extended. So let's go ahead and talk a little bit about Sidney Prescott in her new life. Now, some of these events might be a little out of order, but okay. So the movie picks back up with Sidney. She's got a husband. She's got 3 kids, and they all live in this town called Pine Grove. I'm not sure where Pine Grove is, but I would think it would be nowhere near Woodsboro at this point. It's a small little town, and yeah, Sidney Prescott, she runs a coffee shop. She's the owner of it, called the Little Latte Coffee Company. And it seems like that coffee shop is doing really well, because there's a scene that there's a part that we will talk about later on as to why I think it's doing really well. So yeah, and Tatum Evans, yeah, we might as well talk about her. Sidney Prescott's daughter. And by the way, before I forget to mention this, Sidney is taking her husband's last name. So her name is technically Sidney Evans in the movie. So I just wanted to let y'all know that. But still the same Sidney that we all know and love, just different last name. I think she kind of wants to escape the Prescott last name just because of her life and all of the trauma that the previous killers have had, that have caused her in her life. So she knows she's still a Prescott, but she kind of wants to escape escape being a Prescott. That's kind of, that happens all the time. Whenever somebody gets married, they might take their partner's last name or keep their own last name. But in this case, she wanted to take her husband's last name. Mark Evans is a cop, and no, it's not Patrick Dempsey, as I'm sure y'all probably already know by now. He just happens to be named Mark. And I'm not sure why Patrick Dempsey didn't want to come back and do this one. Maybe he just didn't want to do it. But anyway, so Tatum Evans. So the movie literally picks right back up from the cold open to Tatum Evans in her bedroom. She's on her phone. And what do you know? She's got her own boyfriend named Ben, who... yeah, I'm not gonna lie, he kind of shares some similarities to Billy Loomis, because the way he sneaks into the bedroom and the way that he said, I was watching TV, I was watching I don't know, he said he was watching a horror movie and it got him thinking about Tatum, and that's when Sydney, she decides to knock on the bedroom door to come in, and he's hiding behind the bed there off to the side. And she's like, "Don't you knock?" And she said, "Sorry, why? Is there a problem?" And she says, "No." And Sydney, she ain't no dumbass. She ain't no dummy. She knows, because she can see the window is open. So she's like, "Hi Ben, it's time for you to leave." Yeah, she ain't no fool. Tatum, yeah, Sydney knows because the same thing happened to her in the first movie where her boyfriend snuck through the window, and all of that knowledge is availably out there. So, she's like, "Can he stay?" Sydney says, "Nope, it's time for him to go home." And it's pretty clear that, Sydney, she does not trust Ben whatsoever because she feels like, when these Ghostface attacks start hitting home, Pine Grove, she's going to trust Ben less and less because she's going to think that he's going to turn out to be a Billy Loomis, right? So, understandably, it's very parallel, very similar to when she was 17. So, I get it. And both Tatum and Sydney, they are just spatting at each other. And yeah, I mean, honestly, when you're a teenager, you're gonna, most teenagers, not all, but I would say a good number of teenagers, I'm sure, rebelled against their parents. So, I mean, I didn't have a problem with this because it is realistic whenever you might have a friend or a boyfriend or girlfriend that maybe your parents don't approve of and you're seeing them anyway, and when you do get found out, that's when that's when they would get into it. Just, I'm talking about real life in general, so I didn't have an issue with that. I mean, did I expect their relationship to be perfect right off the bat? No. Tatum is a little rebellious as far as having her boyfriend sneak in through the window and all that shit. And Tatum kind of even calls her out on that, calling her a hypocrite. And that's when Sydney, like, she does it. She remains calm, but she goes in there and says that, I just want you to be careful. I want you to be smart about things. She's just trying to do her best to be an overprotective mom. And Sydney even comments on that, says, she says to her husband that if Tatum, if she thinks that me being an overprotective thing is the worst thing she has to say about that, she's like, I can live with that. I can live with that, especially with all the shit that's happened to me over the 30 years. So, yeah. So now, if y'all watch Scream 5, y'all might be asking, where are the other two kids? Because Sydney has three kids. Well, that's pretty easily explained. So this movie, Scream 7, takes place over a weekend, and her other two younger kids are staying at their grandmother or their grandparents on Mark's side of the family. So that's where they're at. That's easily explained. So there's no logic gaps there. That's very much explained, simple and straight to the point. And yeah, like I was saying, Sydney Prescott, she absolutely does not trust her boyfriend, Tatum's boyfriend, Ben, because she sees a little bit of Billy Loomis in him because the way he first comes into the movie, comes in for the window like Billy Loomis did, and she just, when these murders start happening, she trusts him less and less. I mean, can you blame her? But that's exactly a good red herring character. What, will they do the same thing? Will the boyfriend be the killer? Well, we'll all find out. Now, we got this other character, Lucas, who is another great red herring character because Lucas is obsessed with Sydney Prescott and her life and all the Ghostface hoopla in her whole life, and he's so obsessed with it. And his mom, Jessica, who is played by Anna Camp, she's pretty much telling him, hey, you need to stop, you need to calm down, and then she apologizes to Sydney. She's like, I'm sorry about him being so obsessed about your previous life. And, so yeah, Lucas is a great red herring, while Jessica, she's like more of a understanding type of character. She kind of understands that, I get it, you just want to live your life the best you can and try to put all that shit to the past. And this is all taking place at the coffee shop when Sydney, she goes in, and that's when Lucas comes in. He orders some espresso shots, and it's revealed that Tatum is going to the high school to audition for this play because if you remember, Sydney she was in a play in the second movie, so she wants to try out for this role, and we'll kind of talk about that. So, okay. So, Tatum and her two friends, Hannah, who's played by Grace McKenna, and then their other friend, Chloe. Yeah, Chloe. They're all going to the school to go try out. So Hannah, that's Grace McKenna's character, she's going to be playing this fairy princess in this play, while Tatum is going to be playing this furry character. It's only the one scene, and so you have this professor who's auditioning them to see their performances and all of that. And yeah, Tatum is she's on there, she's on stage, and she's distracted by the just what her and Sydney have been going through. They've been going through a rough patch, disagreement, her being rebellious and Sydney trying to be overprotective. And so we go back. Okay, so we're going to go back to Sydney working at the coffee shop. She gets a call. It's Ghostface that calls her and is, fucking with her and shit. Like, if you've seen the trailer, you got snippets of that phone call. And, he's talking about, oh, I'm so, you've been missed or whatever. And he's like, I'm so glad that, I don't know if he says that exactly, but it's implied that he's like, I'm so glad that I was able to finally find you. And he's like, pretty much I'm going to come after you and your pretty little daughter. And that, obviously, you better not talk about my daughter. And that's when she goes to sit down at her computer at work. And yeah, we got Stu Macher. So the killer. Okay, by the way, just to go ahead and confirm this now and squash it, Stu Macher is dead. Okay, so let's just. I'm gonna say that right now. So whoever the killer is, they are using AI deep fakes, and I gotta say, Matthew Lillard here, he looks real good. He does. He's got the scars and all that shit to make it look like he's alive, right? He's got the scars from when the TV dropped on his head and all that shit. And, Sydney's like, yeah, nice try, motherfucker. I knew Stu Macher's dead. She's not fooled. And, well, Stu, well, not really Stu, but Stu Macher is like, you better not hurt my daughter. And he says, well, you know what? I hate to tell you, but I gotta go. I'm outside of her, where the auditorium is right now. And that's when she fucking hauls ass. She calls her husband, who is the chief of police in the town of Pine Grove. And that's when we pretty much get one of our next kills, because Hannah, well, Grace McKenna, she is not in this movie very long at all, because she is one of the next kills coming up. So Grace McKenna is on this thing, like this harness thing that's gonna harness and wires and all of this, because she's supposed to be in this play. She's supposed to be this fairy princess, so it makes sense she's supposed to fly and all that, right? Well, one of the students that's, messing with the pulley controls, I can't remember his name, but it doesn't fucking matter at this point. Well, he's like testing it to make it, to make the landing and the all that shit not so rough. And you hear a off-screen commotion, and well, Ghostface snuck up behind him and slit his throat, which I will say it's probably the lamest kill, just because it happens off-screen. But we're getting ready to get to one of the most memorable kills of the movie. So, Ghostface has killed the one kid, or the one teenager, that is messing with the pulley system, so Ghostface is like, oh, what's all this do, right? So, Ghostface is messing with the pulley system, swinging her around, rising her up, way up above, way down below, like fucking with her before he decides to kill her. So when he gets her in a prime position where she's swinging back and forth, that's when he starts like fucking with her, cutting her here, there, and when he gets into prime position to kill her, to kill Hannah, he raises his knife up above, and when she's swinging in that direction of the knife, her guts get spilled out onto the floor, and like, damn. Like, that's what I'm saying. This movie, it has gory kills, but not to the extent of something like Terrifier, where it's like 10 times worse. That's one of the three. Yeah, that is one of the three memorable kills right there. That's the first one. It's like, yeah, sure, he's using a knife, but he's using the knife very creatively to get a gruesome kill out of it, not just stabbing and slashing. I mean, he's doing that a little bit, but that isn't what finishes her off. When she's swinging back and forth, and then when her stomach makes contact with the knife, yeah, her whole stomach and all of that gets ripped open, and her guts are pouring out, hanging. By the time the police get there, and Sydney sees Ghostface has already killed her, and she gets her gun out and says, "You motherfucker!" and bam, bam, is shooting him. But of course, he gets away. And now that there's two teenagers confirmed dead, the town goes into a curfew, a lockdown, all that stuff. Oh, this is going to be important. I need to mention this now. When Sydney is at the coffee shop, there's this guy named Carl, okay? It'll be important why I'm mentioning it. It won't be important. It's about to be important, okay? So she's making a coffee for this guy, Carl, and he gets he gets his order, and he just stares at Sydney and doesn't say a word. I know that seems random as hell, but that's going to be important right now. So after Hannah, Tatum's friend, and that other guy got killed, that's when Sydney and Tatum, they're planning on getting out of there. They're planning on packing their shit and getting out of there. And Sydney, she's looking in Tatum's closet, and she's like, "Where's your to-go bag?" And she said, "Oh, I unpacked that a long time ago." And she's like, "Damn it, Tatum." So she gets her to-go bag and starts packing shit in it. And that's when she goes to the, after she's beginning to get, she tells Tatum to start packing up. She goes into her bedroom with her husband. And before that, Mark Evans has the police do a house to house search, like all around their house to make sure nobody's in there. But for plot convenience, for a plot hole, they don't check the fucking attic, because that's exactly where Ghostface is. If you've seen the trailer, you know where this is going. Okay? So Ghostface somehow got in the attic. And so Sydney, she goes back into her bedroom, and she tells Mark, "I didn't know you turned the bedroom light off." And he said, "I didn't." And that's when the realization hits, like, oh shit, somebody else is in this house. And they go to check back on Tatum, but guess who's got Tatum at knife point? That would be Ghostface. Because right before Sydney goes into her bedroom, you can see Ghostface like drop down from the attic and sneak into one of the rooms without her noticing. And so they, Sydney's like, "You better, what do you want? Leave my daughter alone." And Ghostface shakes his head like, "No." And, well, they end up getting the upper hand on him. They surprise him. And, yeah, Mark fights him off, Ghostface off, and Mark goes tumbling down the stairs. And the way that he lands, it seemed like he broke his fucking neck. But turns out later he didn't break his neck. But it just, the way that Ghostface just kind of frozen pushes him down the steps when he's tumbling and fighting with Ghostface there, it sounded like crack. It sounded like he broke his neck, but I guess maybe just broke his, I don't know, maybe he just kind of broke something. It wasn't his neck, because he comes back later. That's when Sydney and Tatum go into the panic room, like you see in the trailer. That's why I think that coffee company is doing quite well, because like she's able to afford a panic room. Like, holy shit. So you guys have seen this part in the trailer where, Sydney, she's like, "I'm going to go get your father. I will be back. I need you to stay in this panic room." And she's like, "No, I want to come with you." And she's like, "All right, fine. Come, you can come with me." So there's a part of the panic room where they go in between the walls, and they're going in between the walls, and Ghostface is like, he's looking around the room like you see in the trailer, and because at that point he can't get in the panic room, and he hears something in between the walls, and he's tapping his knife on the wall, and then he hears like Tatum like kind of gasp a little bit, like real quietly. That's when he starts stabbing into the wall. He doesn't hit Tatum, but once Sydney, she's able to grab an object between the walls, or she's got something in her hand. I think she's got an object in her hands. Once Ghostface is stabbing through the wall, his knife gets stuck into the wall. That's when she decides to actually use the object that she's got in her hands, and she decides to beat up against the blade of the knife to the point where it's permanently stuck into the wall. So that's when Ghostface decides to grab a fire poker and start stabbing through the wall, and the fire poker actually does cut Sydney on the arm there, but both of them, for the most part, get out of there unscathed, except for Sydney. But I mean, Sydney, she's a badass bitch. So, yeah. So they both get out, and they're out of there, and that's when Mark comes back into it. Mark and Ghostface are fighting on the front lawn, and that's when Sydney and Tatum see this, and Sydney tells Tatum, you need to go get the police right now. I'm going to go help your father. So she gets she gets this lamp or something, like an outdoor lamp that's in the front lawn, and she beats Ghostface's head over it. And yeah, so Ghostface and Mark are fighting each other there in the front lawn. And now it's time for Gale's arrival. Oh my goodness, this is an unexpected twist of the movie. So, after Ghostface and Mark are continuing to fight, dumbass Ghostface decides to back himself up into the road only to get fucking run down and run over by a SUV, killing this Ghostface, and it's none other than Gale Weathers coming in. Oh my goodness gracious. That was so unexpected. Hell yeah, that was so badass. And of course, Mindy and Chad are with her, and she gets out of the SUV, Gale does, and she's like, yeah, this is the right place. She's like, it's time to unmask this fucker. And yes, this Ghostface is dead, but this is not the main Ghostface. Okay. So the police are all there, Gale's there, Sydney's there, everybody's there. And yeah, Chad and Mindy are there as well, and they both work for Gale Weathers, as she is going back to her roots of being a reporter, kind of like in the first one, right? And well, they are going to unmask that fucker, and it turns out to be that guy Carl from the coffee shop earlier that did that house invasion. Yeah, he's dead, but I will say why this person did this is Carl was manipulated by the actual Ghostface killer of this movie, and he was a psychiatric patient. So there you go. That's why that happened. And even Chad and Mindy is like, who the fuck is this? Anybody know? And like the police asks Sydney why Carl would have anything, why he would attack them, and she's like, I have no idea, right? Because she doesn't know who the fuck that is, other than she saw him at the coffee shop earlier that day. So yeah, that Carl was influenced and manipulated by the actual Ghostface killer, and Sydney's like, nah, I don't know. She's like, it doesn't feel like it's over, and obviously it's not, because we still got a good portion of the movie to go at this point. And oh yeah, before I forget, oh my goodness, there is a line of dialogue by Gale. Okay. Are you Melissa Barrera Shills ready for this one? Oh my goodness, I had to mention it. There is a line of dialogue provided by Gale that takes a shot at the Melissa Barrera stands, or the Shills, who there was a whole controversy with Melissa Barrera debating on whether if she was fired, or if she wasn't even contracted for Scream 7 originally. And yeah, Gale says that, I wasn't fired. my contract expired, meaning that Melissa Barrera was never contracted for Scream 7, that her contract only stated her to do Scream 5 and Scream 6. So I guess that kind of puts the rumors whether or not she was actually fired or not. So there you go. So I thought that was clever. They didn't mention her by name, but talking about her job in New York from the last movie, that's what they were talking about. But I know they were clever enough to put that little dig in there. So I thought that was pretty good. I thought that was like, oh my goodness, I quite enjoyed that myself. So when Sydney and Gail find out that Carl came from a psychic ward, shit, I forgot the name of it. It's in the movie, but anyway, Sydney and Gail go to the psychic ward where Carl came from, and they run into this orderly guy named Marco, who tells them that Carl was released, and they knew that he was released, and that they tell him that Carl decided to try to kill Sydney and her family, and Marco says, I'm glad that you're all right. And so they have, Marco lets Gail and Sydney take a look at the room, and Marco explains that there was a patient in the psychic ward named John Doe, who's got facial scars and who has amnesia matching Stu Macher's description, because Sydney earlier tells Gail that Stu Macher called me is alive, and she's like, what the fuck did you just say? Like, huh? Stu Macher. And yeah, so that they got that whole thing going on where, where they think that Stu Macher is alive and all that shit. He's not alive. I hope this movie puts that to rest, that yeah, Stu Macher's still out there. Like, if he was gonna come back, he would have came back for this one. I hope that puts to rest that yeah, Stu Macher's fucking dead. I'm not saying I didn't enjoy his performance, but like, I enjoyed Matthew Lillard's performance in the first movie, and he was even pretty good in this one for what he was in for it. But like, come on, like, if you're gonna say that Stu Macher survived that big tube TV being dropped on his head, you might as well bring back Dewey fucking Riley. You might as well. You might as well, dude. I'm telling you. But anyway, so Marco is like explaining that this John Doe guy and Carl, they became friendly with each other, and that he was possibly talking that John Doe was talking to Carl about all of the Ghostface killings and Sydney's life, and that probably got him inspired and all of that shit. So there you go. So now we're going to go back to the house, Sydney's house, and Chad and Mindy are there, and Mindy, she actually makes a character, like a dialogue, not a dialogue, but she's trying to figure out, okay, what the fuck does the killer want? What's his motive this time? And she comes up with, well, maybe the killer's motive is all about wanting it to all be about the final girl, about Sydney Prescott, and that pretty much boils down to what the killer's motive is later on, because the killer, they want it to be, it's all about Sydney, right? Which we will get to. So even though the town is in curfew, Chad and Mindy, they want to review when all of that stuff is happening with Carl and stuff. Like, you got all the neighbors all looking around. You got the professor from earlier looking around. You got Lucas looking around, Jessica looking around. Even Ben is there fucking looking around. And Chad and Mindy, they notice all of that, and they're calculating suspects in their head, especially Mindy. And she wants to get all of the quote unquote suspects in the room. That way she can kind of try to figure out who the killer could be this time around, right? So Tatum is like, I can get my friend Chloe, my boyfriend Ben, and then that Lucas guy to all meet in this bar, which Chloe works at. I guess maybe her family owns the bar. I'm not too sure. But Tatum decides to take Chad and Mindy to the bar. So, yeah, even though Tatum is supposed to be at the house, she's out and about at the bar with Chad and Mindy. And that's when Mark is alone at the house. And there's a part of the house that they got the plastic tarps up and the plastic covers. They're redecorating or they're building on, right, to the garage or something. And that's when Mark gets attacked. As you can see in the trailer, he's in the garage because he heard something fall in the garage, and it was a toolbox where all the tools got knocked over deliberately by Ghostface. By one of, I'm gonna go ahead and tell y'all this now. There are 2 Ghostface killers, so there's technically 3 Ghostface killers in this movie. So I kind of did get that prediction right when I said there's gonna be 3. And I got one of them. I got one of the actual Ghostface killers right. Nobody could have accounted for that crazy Carl guy. So, anyway, Ghostface surprise and jumps Mark and has one of the plastic covers on him and stabs him just repeatedly, like we see in the trailer. And then right after that, Red Right Hand plays, which that's a great song. If you are a Scream fan, you know exactly the song I'm talking about. That one's played in the first one. I think it's played. Is it played in the second one? I'm trying to think. It probably is played in the second one. It's played at the end of the third one. I'm trying to think. Was it played in the fifth? Yeah, no, it was played in the fifth one and the sixth one. So Red Right Hand makes its return once again. A great song. Pretty good song. So everybody is closing up early. All the shops are closing early to abide by the curfew rules, because there's been a couple of murders at this point in this in this small little town. So that's when Tatum and Chad and Mindy get to the bar. And that's when Chloe, Lucas, and Ben are there, all there waiting on them. And, that's when Mindy comes up with the idea, well, let's see what the killer's motive is this time. Well, the killer's motive can't be about, it doesn't seem like it's about the daughter of the final girl. It's got to be about the final girl, Sidney Prescott herself. And yeah, that turns out to be very true. But Mindy's prediction her prediction of the killer is Lucas, while Chad's prediction of the killer is the boyfriend, Mindy. Or, I'm sorry, Ben, Mindy. Mindy's prediction is Lucas, who's obsessed with Sidney Prescott and the Ghostface killings and all of that, and she even acknowledges that. That's why she is suspicious of Lucas of being the Ghostface killer this time around. And Chad is like, yeah, I'm just going to go ahead and suspect the boyfriend of Tatum. And Tatum is like, no, Ben is not, he's not Ghostface. And, Lucas and Ben are 2 really good red herring characters, because Ben, he's got kind of a Billy Loomis type of vibe a little bit. And I could see Lucas, he kind of has like sort of a Stu Macher-ish type of look to him a little bit. So, let's jump to Gail and Sydney. So, Sydney is waiting for quote-unquote Stu Macher to call her back. And, the police are going to put a trace on Sydney's phone for the next time that Ghostface calls her. They're hoping to get a trace, and obviously that doesn't work. So Gail is like, no, Sydney actually comes up with the idea. Well, she's like, you know what, Gail, I'm going to give you what you want for the first time since you asked for it in an interview. So Gail finally gets to interview Sydney live on TV, because they're hoping to, record the phone call and get a trace on it for the police and all of that. But Ghostface doesn't bite while she's on TV. That's their plan, and hoping to get him to take the bait and bite it by calling her live on air. And, Gail is like, you are a survivor of these brutal Woodsboro attacks from 30 years ago. And that, she starts bringing up her kids, and Gail, I mean, not Gail, but rather Sydney, Gail brings up her kids, and she's like, the Ghostface killer is now targeting Tatum, you know, talking about Tatum. And like, I like how the characters commentate on Sydney naming her daughter Tatum, because whenever they think of Tatum, they're thinking of Tatum Riley, the victim. And Sydney, she named her daughter Tatum not because Tatum was a victim, because she explains over and over that Tatum was her best friend. She was the only friend that she could trust ever. And that's why she named her daughter Tatum, not because she was a victim, because she was her best friend that she loved deeply, and that she could only, that was her only friend that she could ever trust at that time. And that's why she named her daughter Tatum. And oh man, Nev Campbell and Courtney Cox's on-screen chemistry is so good. It's so fucking great. Not surprising. Oh man, Sydney was I tell you what, there's even a comment that Gail says, no, Sydney actually says, I should have been there in New York with you. You know what, Sydney? Yeah, you should have been there, because Scream 6 would have been much better with your presence. But here you are in Scream 7, so it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at this point. And Gail's like, no, you really did the right thing staying away, because she said it was brutal. Yeah, it was it was brutal for Gail, because she almost got fucking killed. And there's a part in the movie where Sydney notices Gail's hands, and she's like, "What's going on with your hands?" And she's like, "Oh, nerve damage from New York." So that's an interesting little wrinkle. Apparently she's got nerve damage in her hands from her attack in New York. But anyway, let's get back to this interview. So Gail is insisting on, bringing up her kids, especially Tatum. And she's like, Ghostface is after your daughter Tatum at the same age as you were all those years ago. And Sydney is like, I don't want to talk about my kids. And she tells her like 2 different times, but Gail's like insisting on bringing it up. So Sydney, she decides to walk off stage and end the interview right there, because she's visibly upset. And here's a thing that that's great. Gail says, "I'm sorry for bringing them up, your kids." And she's like, "Are you really?" And after she says that, Gail kind of goes to her pocketbook, and she's fooling around in there. And Sydney kind of sees that Gail's starting to break down a little bit. And I mean, Sydney, she doesn't say nothing, but she notices it. And Sydney says, she makes a good point. She says, "What if, when you were bringing up my daughter," she's like, "What if I would have brought up Dewey to your face? How would you like that?" Right? She's not meaning that in a disrespectful way. I mean, Gail's a little disrespectful there at first, because she asked her, "Please, I don't want to talk about my kids," but she keeps trying to bring it up, right? So Gail responds by saying, "I would say that I'm fine, because I gotta remind myself that I'm fine 500 times a day to keep myself going forward." And so let's jump back to Ben and Tatum. So Ben and Tatum are getting ready to leave the bar, and they get in his vehicle, and he's got his laptop. Ben has his laptop there in the front, and Tatum opens it up, and what do you know? This is where the red herring shit comes in at, okay? So she opens his laptop, and there is a AI editor thing on his laptop of an image of Ben and Stu Macher side by side, and she plays it, and it makes him look real guilty. It makes him look like he's one of the Ghostface killers, because she plays it, and he's messing around with the AI shit on his laptop. And pretty much it comes out of Ben's mouth at first, but then transforms into Stu. and he says that Sidney Prescott, I'm gonna kill you or whatever. And yeah, that makes him look real guilty. So she gets scared and picks up the laptop and bashes him over the head with it and starts to run out into the street because she thinks her boyfriend is Ghostface, right? But he's not Ghostface. We'll get into it. It just makes him look really fucking guilty. So the people at the bar left are Chad, Mindy, Lucas, and Chloe, and so Lucas decides to go to the bathroom, and Ben is already gone, and Mindy notes this very well. She says, Chad, do you notice that the two most likely suspects are conveniently gone at the same time? And both of them are, I think they're both great red herring characters, by the way. And so Chloe decides that she's got a pizza cooking or whatever in the kitchen, so well, she forgot about it and it burns up, so she goes to check on the pizza, only for Ghostface to attack her. And right before then, Chad and Mindy, once they note that both Ben and Lucas are not there at the same time, they're like, "Yep." Chad is like, "Yep, I'm good. I don't feel like getting stabbed today. Yeah, let's get the fuck out of here." Can you blame them? And so they decide to get out of there, but the front door is locked, so they are stuck in there. So Ghostface is toying and taunting with Chloe. They're in the kitchen, and so she decides to grab a knife from the kitchen, and where Ghostface was fucking with her previously, Chad decides to go into the kitchen to see what's wrong, and Chloe, not knowing, thinking that Ghostface is walking up behind her, she accidentally stabs Chad in the shoulder, and he's like, "What the fuck?" Like he didn't know, he's just going in there to check on her. And like she realizes, oh shit, she fucked up. That's when Ghostface sneaks up behind Chad and stabs him in the back, and then just lays him out. And that's when Mindy comes into the picture. She's trying to fight him off. He ends up slashing her stomach, and so that takes both Mindy and Chad out of commission for the rest of the movie. You noticed I didn't say they both died. I just said that took them out of commission for the rest of the movie. And how it's like odd how they both were laying down side by side. It's like kind of like when in the first one, how Dewey and Gail were laying side by side on that front porch. It kind of reminded me of that, how they both just went down like that. And so Ghostface is, fighting all, trying to kill Chloe, and she ends up getting going back out to the bar part. And so she's hiding behind the bar, and she hears the door open up. Okay. So here's what I think is going on. Like I said, there are two additional Ghostface killers. What I think is going on, I think the Ghostface killers wanted to have Chloe believe that everything is in the clear. Okay? So one of the Ghostface killers walks out the door, but the other one sneaks in because she hears the door open and shut, and she's thinking to herself, okay, thank God Ghostface is gone. So she gets up to leave, only for Ghostface to pop out and jump her from another part of the bar. So that's what I think happened there. Because from where he was hiding to the door, how the fuck could he have opened the door and ran? I mean, I guess it's possible he could have opened the door and then ran back there, like crouching. I mean, I guess that is possible. But I think Ghostface probably opened the door to let the other one in and went out to go after Tatum at that point. So Ghostface jumps Chloe at the bar and is sliding her across the bar, and Ghostface ends up stabbing her with a big broken piece of glass in the cheek. So that does it for Chloe. Now, Lucas conveniently, okay, so I forgot to mention, while this is happening, Lucas comes out of the bathroom and he gets stabbed in the stomach, and he's on the ground and he's not dead, and he just had to watch. So, by the way, Chloe was interested in Lucas in a kind of romantic way, and he had to watch the girl that he was interested in get killed right then and there. And this is where the second creative kill comes into play. So instead of finishing Lucas off with stab kills, he's already bleeding out. So Ghostface decides to pick up Lucas and holds both of his hands on Lucas's head. And at the bar, there's this bar tap thing where you pull the lever and beer comes out of it, and there's a spike sticking upward. So Ghostface is a motherfucker right here. This is the second most rememberable kill. He grabs Lucas's head and he has Lucas's head and he's pressing it closer to the bar tap, and he pierces the back of his skull with the spike, and it goes all the way through, and Lucas has his mouth open, and beer and blood is pouring out of his fucking mouth. Instead of just putting him out of his misery, oh god, that was one of the more rememberable creative kills. Even though he starts by stabbing him, he doesn't finish him off. Like I said, he puts the big old spike through the back of his skull, and his mouth is open. Lucas's mouth is open, and beer starts pouring out of his mouth, and so does blood. And he leaves him there while the blood and beer is just all pouring out all into the floor. Like goddamn. And we'll talk about it later. So yeah, Lucas and Hannah so far, they have the most rememberable kills, the most creative kills. So Tatum is, she's running for the streets looking for help. And that's when she runs into Ghostface chasing her. And that's when Ben catches up to her, and he's got a bloody head from where she beat him over the head with that laptop earlier. And that's when, we find out that Ben he really wasn't Ghostface after all, that he really cared about Tatum, because Ghostface jumps up behind him and stabs him to death. And the way that he does stab him, it is it is really bloody. So there you go. That confirms that Ben was just another red herring character, because Ghostface kills him right in front of Tatum. We don't get no fakery bullshit like they did with Billy Loomis. Nope, this is real deal. Lucas and Ben are dead at this point. Both of the red herring characters are dead at this point, for sure. So Tatum picks up this sign, or there's like a display for a welcome sign. She hits Ghostface with it, and he ends up falling through one of the shop windows. The alarms is going off, and that's when Tatum decides to go and run to the coffee shop that Sydney owns. So after Sydney is done at the news station, she sees that there was a break-in at her coffee shop, and she goes to look to see who it is, and it's Tatum in the coffee shop. And at this point, before then, Sydney is calling Mark to see where he's at, and he won't pick up the phone, and it's presumed that he's fucking dead, right? And Mark, I'll go ahead and just say it now, Mark is still alive somehow, but I mean, he's busy bleeding out, so he can't really pick up the phone right now. But anyway, she's frustrated and worried that Mark won't pick up the phone. She wants to know, where Tatum's at, all that shit. So Ghostface gives her a call and says that, oh, your daughter, she's not at home. She's she's in town right now. This is when she was still at the bar. So Ghostface gives her a call and says that, nah, your daughter is not at home. I'm at the bar right now where she's at currently right now. And so she's panicking and, worried for her family's safety. And this movie does a really good job at whenever Sydney's family is in danger, they do a really good job at the tension of like, oh shit, will they make it? Will they die? I think they do a fantastic job with that, honestly. And so Tatum gets into the coffee shop because she knows how to get in there. She knows the code, all that shit to get in there. And so she's panicking. And so Sydney decides to haul fucking ass to the coffee shop, but she's further away from the coffee shop than Tatum is. And she's looking on her phone, looking on the security cameras of the coffee shop, and she's trying to call Tatum to, she hangs up on her, but then she goes to text her to tell her where she's at, that she can't, she can't talk, that the killer's at the coffee shop. And so that's when Ghostface breaks into the coffee shop, and Tatum goes into the office to barricade herself like we see in the trailer. So Sydney's telling her, you need to get into the safe. You need to go ahead and get the gun, and tells her the code, which the code is her birthday, is Tatum's birthday. So she enters the code to the safe, and she pulls out the gun, and she's like, I don't know how to use it because, like how, like in Halloween 2018, how Lori was preparing Karen how to, how to fight, how to be a survivor. They could have easily done that here, but they didn't do that because Sydney, she didn't want to train Tatum to not necessarily be a fighter. It's not that she doesn't believe in her. She just doesn't want Tatum to have the same trauma that Sydney does from all of her experiences with Ghostface. So she's kept her protected and sheltered. And when it comes time to fight, she helps Tatum. She guides her using the security cameras, telling Tatum where to shoot, because Ghostface is moving around trying to look for another way into the office. And she tells her, when Ghostface is in the prime position to be shot at, she tells Tatum to go ahead and take the safety off and to shoot at the calendar on the wall. And every shot connects and hits Ghostface, and he lies on the ground. He's not dead because Ghostface, later it's revealed that he's wearing a bulletproof vest. So there you go. So she gets out of the office and she says that you're gonna, Sydney's telling Tatum you're gonna have to go around her, but you're gonna have to go around Ghostface, telling Tatum that you're gonna have to go ahead and go around Ghostface, but you need to go ahead and shoot him in the head to make sure. And of course, I could understand this. Tatum, she's never been in this situation. She's never had to worry about anything like this. So it's understandable because, it's understandable that she's hesitant to actually kill someone because she's never had to do that before, right? So she believes that, he's dead or whatever. She's panicking. And I gotta say, Isabella May, she does such a great job in this movie, especially the parts where she's running from Ghostface when she's in terror. It's so great. It's so fucking believable. I feel like to me, she's a way better actor than Melissa Barrera and Jenna Ortega. Ooh, you heard that here. You might not hear that from a lot of people, but I'm gonna go ahead and I'm gonna be bold enough and say, fuck it. That's my opinion, and I'm gonna stick with it. I feel like she's a much better character than Sam and Tara, in my opinion. She is a much better character. She's a much more believable character, in my opinion. So she's hesitant, and Ghostface, of course, jumps up and grabs the gun and, knocks it out of her hand. And she, Tatum's got a little bit of fight in her because she's like picking up chairs and hitting him with it. And he ends up landing on one of the tables and breaks that. And she tries to run out of the coffee shop, only for the second Ghostface killer to pop in to surround her. And the Ghostface killers, they kidnap Tatum. And that's when Sydney gets a call from Ghostface and says that, oh, I got your daughter. I got your precious little daughter, Tatum. And she's like, you motherfucker, you better not hurt her. And she's like, the killer is like, well, don't worry. I'm not going to hurt her. I want you to be here. So she's pretty much told by Ghostface to come to her house because that's where Tatum Evans is. And they got Tatum Evans all tied up in the chair, just like how Casey Becker's boyfriend was, with the duct tape over her mouth and all that shit. And so Sydney, she gets home only to be greeted by AI Stu Macher once again. And then she turns off one of the TVs. She's like, okay, you motherfucker, why don't you just come out and just let's get this shit over with, pretty much. So she goes into one room, another TV turns on. It's Stu Macher again. Then this was a surprise to me. After Stu Macher's AI form comes in, Nancy Loomis, Laurie Metcalf is in the movie, obviously as Nancy Loomis for a short little brief appearance. Then followed by Scott Foley, Roman Bridger from Scream 3, and they even got to drag poor Dewey Riley into it, holy shit, to try to, to fuck with Sydney. And that's when Sydney is like, okay, where's my daughter, And that's when Ghostface switches back to Stu and says, your daughter is in your backyard. And that's when comes up again. That's when she goes into the backyard, and that's when Tatum is tied to the chair with duct tape on her mouth, and Ghostface has a knife to her throat, and that's when Ghostface, one of the Ghostface killers, unmasks, and it turns out to be Marco from the psychiatric ward. Okay, I have a bit of an issue with his motive, only because he doesn't really have a motive. He's not the mastermind behind this, by the way. He's the lackey. He's the lackey to the actual mastermind behind this one. So the reason that all that AI deepfakes was happening is because Marco knows how to do those AI deepfakes, and that's the result of why she's been talking to quote unquote Stu Macher. And my only guess as to why he's going around killing, is, well, okay, once the other killer is revealed, I'll talk about it. So the other killer comes out from the bushes, and it's revealed the other killer is revealed to be Jessica, Sydney's neighbor, Anna Camp. I got that prediction right. That's the only one that I got right, because she ends up being the mastermind behind it. And okay, there was why what her motive is Jessica is pretty much a fucking Looney Tune, and she's obsessed with Sydney Prescott, okay, to the point where you know Jessica explains earlier in the movie that she was in an abusive relationship, and that kind of messed with her psyche a little bit. And here's the fucked up thing about it is it's very likely that she killed her own fucking son at the bar, that she was the one. At least if she didn't, she had her son killed, because she said, Sydney is like, well, what about your son Lucas? And she's like, well, he was too much like his father. So she says, well, he had to die, he was too much like his father. Like, what the fuck? You're gonna say that about your own flesh and blood? You crazy fucking bitch. So her motive is, unlike Marco, she's got a motive. Her motive is she is so obsessed with Sydney Prescott to the point where, you know, I want to see the Sydney Prescott of old. I want to see that spark of the killer Sydney Prescott come back. So this was a way for her to bring that spark out of her once again. And she is like, she decided to commit herself in the psychiatric ward, the same psychiatric ward that Carl came from, and supposedly John Doe, which ended up being Anna Camp's character this whole time. But obviously Marco was there to fabricate the story of, oh, okay, it was probably Stu Macher, obviously, because he was the second one. And now I'm guessing that his motive is maybe he felt bad for Jessica and even probably fell in love with her. They don't really explain what his motive is. That's kind of why I don't like his motive, because he doesn't really have one, other than, I'm just guessing, he probably felt sorry for Jessica, or even fell in love with her possibly, and that she obviously planned this because, her whole goal is she wants the old Sydney Prescott to come back. She wants that killer Sydney Prescott to come back. She believes that Sydney's life should just be filled with nothing but trauma, no happy endings, nothing. And she says that, I'm going to kill you, Sydney. And that's when it's revealed that her husband, that, Mark Evans, is still alive. He's fucking bleeding like a stuck pig at that point, but he's still somehow alive. And so while Jessica is going on about her whole monologue, he's got a knife or whatever, and mind you, before the reveal, Sydney, Ghostface tells her to drop the gun, and she does, but this is before the reveals. But Sydney ain't no dummy. Yeah, she drops the gun, but she's got a second gun stashed behind her out of view. So she ain't no dummy. So we're going to get back to the monologue and all that great shit. so, so yeah. So somehow I think Mark has a knife, and while the killers are all focused on Sidney Prescott, they're not even fucking paying attention to Mark. Mark is cutting Tatum free while all this fucking monologuing is going on. And so, yeah, it basically, Jessica's plot or her motive comes down to she's a fucking Looney Tune character. She's an actual fucking Looney Tune fucking bitch. And I gotta say, her facade, she does a really good facade there at the beginning because they are having you think that Lucas is probably going to be Ghostface because he shows signs that he's obsessed with Sidney Prescott when this whole time Jessica was the one that was actually really fucking obsessed with her, but she has a very good facade, a facecade to hide that obsession. And I gotta tell you, I've never seen Anna Camp in anything before this movie, but my god, she turns up she turns it up to an 11. A lot of people are going to bitch about, oh, it's the worst motive, blah, blah, blah. Okay, is this motive the best motive ever? No. Is it the worst one ever? In my opinion, no. It's not worse than fucking Amber and Richie. I'm sorry. The whole toxic fandom bullshit motive, nah, I'm sorry. That one just, nah, This motive, I gotta say, I don't know. I would say if I had to rank the motives, I would put this one above Amber and Richie, fucking obviously, and then I would put this one above the other three from the last movie. I would. I don't know if I'd put it above any other ones. So this one's for me is like kind of like in the middle. I don't know. Some people are gonna fucking hate it. I don't know. I was fine with it. I was like, okay, whatever. I thought that Jessica was going to turn out to be Stu Macher's sister. I mean, I was right about Jessica being one of the Ghostface killers, but the motive I didn't get that right. But it is what it is. So after the monologuing, she pretty much says that I'm going to kill you, Sidney, and that I'm going to show Tatum what it is to be a survivor. She wants to recreate what Sidney had to go through when her mother was murdered. Wants to create all that trauma that Sidney had to go through. So that pretty much boils her motive down. And it's like fucking crazy that she had her own son killed or even possibly even killed him. It seems like the way, if you see the scene, I think she probably killed him. Because, like I said, when that bar door was opening, it seemed like Marco was there at the bar, but then they decided to switch places. Call me crazy, but yeah, I mean, it ain't the first time that a family member of Ghostface would have murdered their own family member. It's shit. You got Roman, Jill Roberts did the same shit. So I wouldn't be surprised if Jessica killed her own son because she's like, oh, he's too much like his own father, so he had to die. And I tell you, Anna Camp, again, I've never seen her in anything before, but damn, when she's crazy, I thought she turned up the crazy dial to an 11. Like, holy shit. I think for me, she was the better of the two Ghostface because she had an actual motive. He didn't really have a motive other than he probably felt sorry for her and then probably fell in love with her. That's my guess. But anyway, once Tatum is free, they get the jump. Tatum gets the jump on Marco, and that's when Sidney pulls out that second gun and shoots Marco right between the motherfucking eyes. Boom, just like that. Marco's gone. Jessica goes running into the garage, and that's when Jessica and Sidney, Sydney and Jessica, hold on, I got a couple of things to check off before I continue. We're almost done, I promise. Yeah, Mark is still alive. Yep, I kind of went through that. I don't know how the fuck he is alive, but he is. Oh god. So now we have Sydney versus Jessica in the garage. So they're both getting into it, and I'm telling you, Jessica or Anna Camp is holding her own against Nev Campbell. Holy shit. Y'all can say whatever about the motive. I mean, whatever. I don't think it's the worst motive. It is what it is. It's a fucking Scream movie, okay? It's not like it's going to be a cinematic masterpiece. Holy shit. Like, I mean, if you're expecting Scream to be a cinematic masterpiece, I don't know, man. But anyway, we get Sydney versus Jessica, and Jessica's like taunting her, saying that you're way past your fucking prime and all this shit, and Sydney is fucking her up. And so she shoots Jessica a couple of times, and then that's when Tatum comes in and decides to help her, to help her mom. And she tells Tatum, like, you gotta shoot them in the head to make sure that they're dead and gone. And of course, Jessica gets up without them paying attention. She's still alive. And this is, oh man, let me tell you, this next part is fucking badass. This part is so badass. So when Sydney and Tatum, they have Jessica face to face, both of them have guns, and they finish Jessica off. I am not fucking kidding you. I was sitting near this guy, and he said it as soon as it happened. The way that Sydney and Tatum finished Jessica off, woo wee! It was a literal Mortal Kombat fatality. Holy fucking shit! They shoot the fucking piss out of her to the point where her face is completely blown off, and literally this guy is like, fatality. Oh damn, that part was so fucking badass. The way they fuck her up to make sure she is not getting back up. Oh my goodness gracious. So the three most rememberable kills is Hannah, where her gut, where she's hanging from the thing on the stage, Lucas, and then Jessica, because it's the way. This part I would say is maybe a little overly excessive with the gore, a little bit, but you don't get much of that in this movie. Like I was saying in my spoiler-free review, that the gore, it is gory, but it's a tasteful gory. If that makes sense, it ain't it's not on the extreme levels of Terrifier. But this one, I'm like, okay, damn, this is the finale, so I guess it kind of makes sense to kind of go all out, right? And so they fuck her up, Mortal Kombat fatality style. Holy shit. The way, oh my god, that was so great. And that does it for both of the killers. And then Gale comes into it, after the aftermath of it, and what do you know? Chad and Mindy somehow survive. So both of them are still alive. I don't, will they come back? Who knows? I mean, you never know what might be possible in Scream at this point. As far as certain people surviving knife wounds and all that shit. And, you know, Gail, I'm surprised she didn't have anything to do there in the third act, because once Sydney leaves the news station, Gail is like gone for that portion of the third act until the very end, after all the, after the aftermath and all that. And, not Gail, but Sydney pretty much says that, Sydney pretty much says to Gail that I can always rely on you, and they both embrace in a hug, which, if you know, their relationship did not start off like that at all, because Sydney fucking bitch slapped her in the second one and punched the shit out of her in the first one. But then after that, Gail was like, yeah, maybe I should stop trying to piss Sydney off, because I don't feel like getting punched again. Even in the third movie, when they both, meet up again, you can both kind of see that they're kind of they both of them have an awkward hug because of the previous events. But at this point, they're pals, obviously, at this point. And okay, so here's one thing I did want to go ahead and talk about. So obviously, all of the information about Sydney's life with the Ghostface killers and all that shit is public information in these movies already at this point. And she even tells, at one point, she tells Tatum that you can, even if you want to know so much, you can do a deep dive. But and Tatum knows that, but Tatum would rather hear it from Sydney herself. I think in a way it would be, for Tatum, it would be a way for them to grow closer together instead of further apart. But Sydney, she doesn't like to talk about it because it just brings up all of the past trauma. And by the end of the movie, by the end of the movie, Sydney tells Tatum that I didn't name you Tatum because she was a victim. I named you after her because she was my best friend and somebody that I cared about who unfortunately got killed. I don't think about her as a victim. I think about her as my best friend who I could trust. And then when Gail comes into the, after that, Gail comes in and, Sydney pretty much says that, you know what, I can trust you now because you're pretty much my only friend at this point. So they both hug it out, and that's when the ambulance loads up Mark, and Sydney tells Tatum, like, come on, let's go see your dad. And the movie ends with Tatum, Sydney, and Gail all walking side by side, and we get to the end credits. So that's my spoiler review on Scream 7. I know this one was a tad bit long, and I don't know if I even covered everything, but hey, I tried to remember the best I could. And like I said, I would have to definitely see this movie again to see where I would definitively rank it. But I can already tell you this right now. I have this one ranked without a doubt above Scream 3, Scream 5, and Scream 6 definitively. It's not even a question. Now, I'm definitely going to be getting this movie as soon as it is able to come out to the world, once it's out of theaters, all that shit. It's definitely going to be a purchase for me. Yeah, I so much prefer, if I had to pick between Halloween Ends or Scream 7, look, I am an avid defender of Halloween Ends. Most people do not like that fucking movie, and I get it. I understand why. I'm not a massive Halloween fan, but I quite enjoyed Halloween Ends. But however, I much prefer Scream 7 over Halloween Ends, definitely. I'm not saying it's on that level, but some people will think, oh, Scream 7 is just as bad as Halloween Ends, if not worse. See, and I told you guys, you know what? I told you guys that the narrative is out there that if the killer was not Stu Macher, that, this is the worst Scream movie ever. And that narrative is out there hot and heavy because they didn't get what they wanted of Stu Macher being alive. Bro, you know what? This might sound a little controversial. I don't care. I am so glad that they confirmed that this movie confirmed that Stu Macher is dead, that he's dead and gone. Just only because, you know how many years we've all had to listen to, oh, Stu Macher's alive. He's alive. He survived the TV being dropped on his head. Now, I hope this movie definitively puts that to bed once and forever, once and done. The point is, Stu Macher's dead. He's not coming back. Okay, just you Stu Macher enthusiasts, just let it die. It's okay. If you really enjoy Stu Macher that much, just go back and rewatch the first one, which I'm not saying that's a bad thing to do. The first Scream movie is really fucking good. So I'm just saying, if you were hoping that Stu Macher is alive, I just don't, unless they pull some bullshit out of their ass and say that, you know what, he was actually alive, that he'll be in number 8. I still kind of could hear that low key going around that, oh, no, Stu, they're going to be in such denial that, oh, Stu Macher was actually the mastermind behind this movie and he's still alive. I hope this movie puts that. I hope they come out and confirm that, yeah, Stu Macher is dead, that Matthew Lillard will not be coming back no matter what. I hope, because I am so sick and tired of hearing it. Oh, Stu Macher's alive. And I'm thinking to myself, did these people actually watch the first Scream movie? Like, okay, whatever. Let them think that, I guess. But yeah, I really like the journey that I really love the journey that, Tatum Evans goes from being sheltered and protected and going all the way through the movie to the end of the movie where she's a fighter, fighting alongside Sidney Prescott to take out one of the Ghostface killers. And I am interested, and I'm interested to see the potential growth of Tatum Evans going forward if they do decide to make a Scream 8. And by reports, it seems like a Scream 8 is probably going to likely happen because there's a report going around that, yeah, that Scream 7 is going to earn the most amount of money that a Scream movie has ever made, surpassing Scream 6, by the way. If that report turns out to be true, that the Thursday night previews are the highest of the franchise, opening at 7 point something million dollars, which that's a pretty good fucking start if you want to get another one out. So, there you go. Now, for any of you that has seen this movie, I don't know. Y'all let me know, what are your thoughts on the movie? I have to say, I absolutely fucking loved this movie. Oh man, I wish I had money to go see it again this weekend because I absolutely would. But that's okay. I can't wait to watch this movie again. Oh my goodness. It was a great movie. I don't give a fuck what Rotten Tomatoes says. Rotten Tomatoes, they don't usually favor horror movies anyway. So, and the last time I looked, not that I give a fuck what Rotten Tomatoes says, the last time I looked, that the audience score was way higher for this one anyway, which I'm not, I think the Rotten Tomatoes score for the critics was like at a 40 something, but the audience was at a 76. So, not the highest, but significantly higher than the critics, which, I kind of already talked about that. But anyway, I've been going on and on and on, but I wanted to try to cover everything, and I think I might have. I'm trying to think if I missed anything. If I did, definitely feel free to let me know. And one of my subscribers was telling me about that song, um, with Grace McKenna and Nine Ice Kills, I think is what it was called. I haven't listened to it, but I'm gonna look it up because they said it was pretty good. And I didn't even know Grace McKenna sung. To be honest, I've never seen Grace McKenna in anything other than this movie. And I mean, again, she's not in it long. She's one of the first kills of the movie. So, but she has one of the most memorable kills. I will give her that. And she was fine for what she was asked to do. But anyway, man, this is going to be a long one. So I'm going to go ahead and go so I can go ahead and edit this and hopefully get this out on Saturday, that's today. But anyway, I am hungry. So I'm going to fix something and I will catch you guys. I will catch you guys next time. Until next time, bye guys.